Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Sanella and I are going to talk to each other today about self-compassion. It's our new topic for the month. And I'm going to invite her in. Let's see. I've invited her. Let's see if she's around. So it's going to be exciting to see Sanella back on the other side of the phone, on the other side of the computer screen, because we were just together for 4 days in Mallorca. Okay, so she's joining in. Let me know if I need to send you another request, Sanella. Let's see, I'll invite you again. There we go. We were just together, face to face. As you know, Sanella's in the UK and I'm in Switzerland. So is the fact that we've been working together, we've known each other since 2016. We've been working together for, over 5 years now. And we have only been in each other's presence for 3 times ever. So we just spent a lovely, lovely 4 days on a retreat. Okay, she's requesting to join. I accept. Hopefully she can join me here. Gosh, honestly, I think it was easier for us to join each other in Mallorca than it is to join each other here on Instagram. Okay, we try again. I've invited you again, Sanella.
Hello.
There. Excellent.
Okay, here we are.
Yeah,
Sorry
it's
about the
super.
delay.
It's okay. I was just saying that I think it was easier for us to join each other face to face in Mallorca for 4 days than it was to join on Instagram.
It was, yeah, easier and very, very joyful and lovely. So, yeah, but I'm glad I managed to join you here.
Yeah, yeah. Our Mallorca trip was super special. As I was saying, despite having worked together for 5 years and known each other for even longer, we have only been in each other's physical presence on 3
Yeah,
instances. That's
crazy,
crazy.
absolutely
We
crazy.
because I feel like we know everything about each other. But as we learned when we were in Mallorca together, we don't know everything about each other, but now we know even more. It was wonderful. So while we were there, we were strategizing about the future of our collaborative work together and the expansion that that's going to take in the future. And so there'll be more about that later. But one of the things that we did spend some time talking about was our new topic for the month, which is self-compassion. And it follows on perfectly, don't you think, to our perfectionism topic.
Oh, 100%, 100%. I think um, you can only overcome or learn to mitigate your perfectionist tendency, my perfectionist tendencies, when you embrace self-compassion. That is one thing I know for sure. So
True. So true. So let's get started. We're here on our unpolished podcasts that we do on Instagram Live. And for those of you who are joining, if you haven't met us before, we are Terry and Sanella, and we are all about wholehearted and authentic transformation of individuals through personal development. And so we're going to be, touching on self-compassion today. And, we'll talk a little bit about kind of the definition around self-compassion, and we draw a lot on the work of Kristin Neff. And what we really want to share with you, though, is some of our lived experiences, because I think people learn best when they have these examples, and, we can only speak the best. We can share other people's examples, but we can speak the most honestly from our own examples. So let me just set the stage a little bit, talking about, Kristin Neff talks about self-compassion, and she basically breaks it down into 3 elements of self-compassion. Self-kindness instead of self-criticism. So she always says the positive and the negative side of it. So self-kindness instead of self-criticism. So talking to yourself like you would a friend. The second element is something she calls common humanity instead of isolation, which basically means, look, when you're in struggle, remind yourself and recognize that struggle is part of the human experience, and everybody struggles at some point in time, and that you're not really alone in this. It's not unique to you, and it's not only you that this is happening to. And the third element being mindfulness, instead of what she calls over identification. So when you have those big hard emotions in moments of struggle, that we are mindfully with them, that we acknowledge them, but we don't, fall into them or ruminate on them, or we also don't ignore them. So we acknowledge and move on, acknowledge and move on. So that being the case, right, there's a lot of tricky things about self-compassion. There's a lot about why we don't do it. There's a lot of misunderstanding that self-compassion is the same as self-care. And so all of those concepts over the course of the month, we're going to be looking into, and we're going to be talking about them, of course, on our monthly connection session that people can join us for. But I want to start by looking into these 3 elements of self-compassion. We together shared an experience in learning about self-compassion when we were certifying in Brene Brown's work, when we were in Sydney at that course with her and her team. And that program brought in the work of Kristin Neff. And for me, it was a new exposure to self-compassion. I want to hear how it was for you. What was when you got exposed to it during that Daring Way training? What was it like for you? What came up for you around hearing the talk?
Okay, so hearing about, if it wasn't Brene who did all the work, and kind of like at that point, I had a massive trust in her and what she was talking about. If it wasn't her telling us about that courage cannot go without self-compassion, that I cannot possibly get to where I wanted to get to without going through and embracing self-compassion. If it was anyone else, which there were people before her who were telling me that I need to be less self-critical and more self-kind, I would have just overlooked it, as I did many, many times before. So, so my relationship with self-compassion was sort of like, yeah, I understand. I get it. I totally get it when it's to do with other people. I always have been very kind to other people. But when it came to me and my perceived or real failures in life, self-criticism was very much my go-to motivational, my go-to pushing through things. That was my thing. Like I did not really believe. Well, I didn't give it any thought. Let's put it this way.
Okay. So I'm picking up on that. This is a message that the universe was bringing to you several times through several teachers, and you more or less brushed them aside or said, yeah, good for others. I'm good. I'm okay where I'm at. You mentioned the self-criticism, that you did acknowledge that was always a part of how you moved through failures or difficulties. So there is a test that they asked us to take. It was the self-assessment test by Kristin Neff, and we'll put the link in the show notes to this live so that people can find it for themselves. The test results can be a little bit tricky to understand. So we're going to be going through them on our connection session on May 17th. So if anybody wants to take the test and then process them with us on the May 17th connection session, we'd be happy to have them do that. But I'm curious, when you took that test, did the self-criticism element show up there? Or what, what did those results point to for you?
Well, I redid the test this morning again, just because that's something about self-compassion. As any personal development work, you do not just decide to be better at it and then it happens like this. It's a process, and I have been sitting with self-compassion for, I don't know, years now. So it was really nice to see the results, that the shift in results. I really like that. But I can remember, so the kind of categories that Kristen talks about. So self-kindness, that was very low for me. Self-judgment, very, very high. Common humanity, very low. Which meant that when I went into if I failed, there was a sense that everybody else would have done something better, and everybody else does things better, and I'm just sort of like this anomaly of a human being.
Yeah, the anomaly. Yeah, I get that.
And then isolation, which, lack of common humanity, or perceived sense that you are part of common humanity, then definitely leads to high sense of self isolation, like I am the only one who suffers. Not that I put it in those words, but there was a sense feeling that, this is, as I said, this is, other people are definitely much better than me. Mindfulness for me, very good, because I've been a coach for years, and personal development is my, it's what I love. So self-awareness was extremely high. But mindfulness requires the move through emotions, like you explained. So Kristen is very clear that it is not about recognizing and going, I feel bad. Oh my God, I feel bad. I'll never get better. I used to get stuck. I used to be very aware, but then couldn't let go, because obviously self-criticism was high. So I was like caught in this vicious circle.
See how those connect.
Exactly. And it was sort of like and almost unwillingness to let go, to invite, to allow self-compassion before I suffered enough, because you had to suffer enough to kind of teach yourself a lesson. I had those kind of narratives. I know it pains me even talking about it.
Yeah, but I can relate to that there's some debt. There's some debt to be paid in. And if you don't pay it, you will not have learned the lesson.
Yes. And, when you say that, then when I became parent, there is certain narratives in parenting, for example, that kind of like, we need to teach kids, when they make mistake, then you teach them a lesson, and then you kind of let them, stew, to think and reflect. And that is, I have to say, I brought that with me, not to the extent I experienced as a child, but that was another thing that kind of made me realize that, this is crap. Like, when I saw it, doing it to my kids, I was like, oh, horrid.
Yeah,
So
I
that was
had the
another.
same.
Yeah.
I had the same. I remember.
Tell me.
Well, I just remember, with respect to the parenting, I remember thinking I hadn't, until this moment, I hadn't tied it to this bit. But you're right. This debt, if you do something wrong or you fail, you have to pay a debt to learn the lesson. And I remember when my kids were younger, like, if timeout chair was a thing, and I know now, it's not now.
We know better.
We know better. But if you had to put the kid into timeout, or if you had to give them some sort of a consequence, sometimes they were like totally okay with it. And I thought, okay, if they're not upset and crying, are they actually learning a lesson? Like, like if they're like, you need to go think about what you've done, go take some time in your room. Okay. And if they're in there just happily, you know, playing with whatever, I'm like, didn't work, right? And you're right. That's the narrative is tied. Brilliant.
Yeah, and I this is why I think it's so important that we, as you know, we're not doing it well. We need to do it for ourselves. Like, you know, this self-compassion work, you do it for yourself. But you know, we both experience it, how it kind of shows up in there, then how it shows in relationships. So the more critical, the less self-compassionate we are, then especially with people who are close to us, it's harder for us to extend that compassion to other people. We, you know, we kind of very quickly, we may be outwardly experiencing, you know, expressing that, but then we move quickly into resentment because we just don't know what that feels like to be compassionate and more, you know, and mindful. And then, you know, at work as well, like, you know, you just,
Yeah.
when we learn to do it for ourselves, everything else around us becomes more progress, more forward orientated, more constructive, more kinder, like, you know, kinder and I don't know, collaborative. I don't know. Those are the kind of words that come to me as a
Yeah. Well, to that same line of thinking, you know, why we are not going to be able to be as compassionate to others if we are also not extending our self-compassion, right? Like,
yeah.
why should I? I'm not taking it easy on me. If I'm not getting a pass, you're not getting a pass either.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely. And although it may, like, I knew for myself then, and I know a lot of people I work with, they would not, they have lots of compassion for other people, but then they lack boundaries. So that then, you know, so this is where we kind of get that thing that we can be compassionate, like boundlessly present for others, without being kind to ourselves. I think that just doesn't tie up, because then we, as I said, move into resentment. But tell
so
me
it could go
about
either
yours.
way.
Yeah.
It could go either way. We're either being endlessly compassionate to others and not to ourselves. But then if we're being endlessly compassionate to others, we're not likely setting any boundaries around that. And then we move to resentment for sure. Or if we don't give compassion to ourselves, we're, you know, resisting giving it to others because that's just not how you learn.
Yes.
That's not.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. So tell me about yours. Have I covered everything? Yeah. Oh, over identification. Sorry, I forgot about that one. Yes, that was, yeah. I over identified. I had big feelings, and then they were true. They were like, you know, I pretty, yeah. I believed strongly and over identified. So
Yeah.
again, with that being high, then you can't really use mindfulness. You can't really go through. So you end up being stuck a little bit, or quite a lot longer than you need to in the experience.
Yeah, for sure. With respect to my experience, I was reflecting on it this morning because, to be 100% honest, which we are here, that's what we commit to. When it was being brought up in our Daring Way training with Brene, I was sort of like, why is she? I don't know why this is part of the curriculum. I don't. I didn't see the connection. For me, being brave and courageous, like if you were brave and courageous, then you didn't need, you know, self-compassion. Like I had this sort of mixed and maybe very wrong understanding of what, you know, brave and courageous meant, first of all. Also, I look back as to why I did not feel a need to be practicing self-compassion. I'm like, I don't think I'm mean to myself. And I've told you this before, like I don't tend to have, I'm pretty honest with myself. Like I see what I'm doing that might not be good, but I don't beat myself up. I never really get into calling myself names. I might be like, oh, come on, Terry, let's go. You know, I might give myself a little bit of a kick in the butt, but I'm not unkind. I don't do that to a large extent. And I remember back in childhood, like was, I'm just gonna say it. I was experiencing a lot of success at things. Whatever I
Mm.
tried, I was successful at. Whatever I did well. Now, I think also I was very smart and savvy, and I only did things that I knew I would succeed at. I remember two things that, I still have to this day. My mother telling me, when I was telling her, that, oh, mom, look at all these awards I had won, for academic awards, and for this sport day running event, and for this, other event, and for my dance, and for the, I had a lot of celebration. And I remember her teaching me modesty. And I'm like, what do you mean modesty? She's like, I'm like, okay, so I don't think I tended to be critical. I think I tended to be a little bit conceited as a child
Mm.
because
Mm.
I was playing big in safe arenas. The
Mm.
second thing my mother taught me was when I needed to audition in music for something that was a higher level, because
Mm.
I was doing well and I was at this junior level, and then the option was you can audition here or you can audition at this more senior level now. But
Mm.
if you audition at the more senior level, it's going to be a challenge for you and you may not make it. If you audition at this lower level, you're definitely going to make it. You're definitely going to get first spot. And
Mm.
I didn't know what to do. I thought I should just do the lower level. And my mother said, I think you need to audition for the senior level. She said, I
Mm.
think you need more experiences of failure.
Mm.
Um, Same thing when I didn't want to run for class president. Like I was going to run for class president with my friend as vice president, and then I found out that my boyfriend at the time was running for president also, and he was really popular. And I thought, I'll never. It's a popularity contest. I'll never win. Why? I'm not going to run. And she said, you need to run. I ran. We did not. I did not win. So, but this point, thinking back to why I didn't connect to this self-critical mindset, right? And these
Mm. Mm.
experiences of my childhood where I didn't experience a lot of failure, and my mother was noticing that and was steering
Mm.
me to more challenges so that I would
Mm.
experience failure. And of course, then
Mm.
when I started being daring and courageous in those arenas, then I started realizing, oh, now
Mm.
I can see where, you can get a little tough on yourself when things are hard.
Mm. Okay.
And so for me, when I took the test,
Mm-hmm.
um, the self-kindness and, versus the self-criticism, there wasn't a lot of, that was fairly high scores on the self-kindness. Um, Mindfulness, kind of mid-range, but the common humanity versus isolation,
Mm.
this I was not scoring well in. And I think
Mm.
this was my biggest learning, that self-compassion also has to do with this common humanity piece. It's not just, are you calling yourself names?
Mm. Mm.
So for me, I realized, wow, I'm not very compassionate, because when I did fail or I did struggle or something in life, parenting, something happened with my children, I withdrew. I went
Mm.
completely to isolation. I could other people's, happy holidays when I was struggling with my children, and then with their pictures of their kids eating ice cream cones, and I was just like, it really made me, I was pained, it made me bitter, and I'm like, ooh, okay, this is
Mm.
that. This is, no, these things don't
Mm.
happen
Mm.
to me. And so that when they do,
Mm. Mm.
I could not see that they would also happen to other people.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
that
yeah,
has
yeah.
been my ongoing area of practice
Mm.
since doing that test.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It's beautiful that both of us have have. I love the test. It's so granular, and Kristen has done the work in such a way that makes that self-compassion, as you say, like, you know, it breaks it down so that you can really get specific on what that looks like for you. And also it makes it easier for us to see that whilst, you know, I might be like not as critical with myself, I in a way, that self-criticism is not that internal voice. It's that kind of not allowing for the human, you know, bad human experience, or like, you know, normal human experience to happen to you, which is, in a it's a kind of sort of I don't know, sort of side way of
Sidestepping. Yeah,
sidestepping. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, you're right.
so yeah. So this test is I mean, we'll put the link in the notes, and it just gives what it does. It breaks it down into these categories, but it also gives you a level, a sort of a way to see where you are at this point in time. I don't know if my internet connection is a bit unstable, but
You were
I'm
just buffering for a little bit, so I didn't,
okay.
you know, it was, at least on my end, it was a little choppy, the last statement you said. So if you can just repeat the last statement, I think we're okay now.
So what I was saying, that doing a test really gives you an opportunity to put a stake in the ground for this work. So, you know, it gives you a sense of where you're now. As with us, you know, it gave us the areas in which to focus personal development, in which to kind of be more aware or deepen that self-awareness. And then over time, you know, redoing it, I think it's real really good practice, because I do this with my clients. You know, I ask them to do it at some point, and then later on I redid mine this morning. I was like, wow, girl, you know, you came a long way.
Hey, awesome.
And yeah, and I don't say this to boast at all. It's just and it did not happen overnight. It actually happened in very small moments. But in my life, even yesterday, coming back from Mallorca, I had a moment where I practiced this self-compassion, or this way of being, that was super helpful. And I think it's really, really, really good, really good.
So tell me, give me a couple of examples of the practices that you had adopted between first test and this retest. You know, what are some of the practices that you're doing around this that people can start to implement as a result of knowing, you know, which one of these elements of self-compassion am I struggling most with?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, for me, self-kindness, self versus self-judgment. I walked out of that training in Sydney, um, having had a embodied sense of what it feels to leave yourself, abandon yourself in hard moments. And I think I remember when it happened in the exercise, and walking out of that room, and you know, on that key, whatever, looking at the opera house. I remember just saying, never again, never again. You cannot leave yourself, you cannot dare yourself, you cannot ask yourself to be brave, and then as soon as the goings get tough, to kind of say, oh, you know, you're rubbish, you're this, you're that, and you know, you will never this and you will never that. So that was the first thing. And I think it helped to get that felt sense. So the practices would be, I mean, yesterday I had it was an example of a stressful moment where my self-critic, just like, you know, I was in a queue. I was sort of in, having arrived at the airport like 5 hours or 3 hours before. I found myself in a queue for passport checkup, and in danger of being late. And yeah, so that was just like my first thing was, how could you, why did you, you should have known better, blah, blah, blah. And then it was just, I imagine now, if I was saying that to my child, like, if Sophie or Oliver were upset, would you be now kind of, revving them up and telling them, like, telling them off? Or would you be calming everyone down, giving them a hug, taking deep breaths, and kind of saying, I understand, just recognizing the stress. So for me, it's making use of self-awareness. How I was feeling, I felt stress in my body. One that I do a lot is the soothing touch. Just it sometimes it's a proper, like a hug. Yesterday it was really going inside my head and just I don't know how to explain that, but just being with myself and saying it's okay, it's all right, and then immediately looking at the situation the way I would look if you told me that, like, you are stressed. I wouldn't be going, like, criticizing. I would be like, oh, you see, but, like, you haven't traveled, like, see how, like, you're out of practice, like, and then, like, seeing that it's actually quite disorganized and it's quite big. So I allow myself to, take that perspective now. So that would be, perspective taking. And then paying attention, just recognizing little things, like recognizing, saying to myself when I do things well, recognizing them, being kind, cheering myself on, high-fiving myself when I kind of, like, if I've done, like, this morning I had to do, like, a couple of things that were on my to-do list, hard things, daring things. Instead of kind of saying, oh, it's okay, what's next, I was like, well done, girl, well done. So I now talk to myself actively as I would to anyone else.
And I like that you role play it. You role play it out in your head.
Yeah.
Would I talk to my child this way? Would I talk to my best friend this way?
Yeah.
And how would I talk to them? Okay, I'm going to talk to me that way. And then celebrating. So not even just not being critical of yourself when you're struggling, but also celebrating yourself when you have successes. Equally important. Those are great practices.
Yeah. How about you?
The practice that I took on for the remembering common humanity and not going to isolation is first just observing myself withdrawing in times of hard moments. And, when I go in, when I don't want to pick up the phone, when I don't want to even look at the text messages, when I don't want to, say yes to a coffee with a friend. Yeah, right. I notice it now. And so that self-awareness allows me, I know that I need the opposite of what I want. I know that when I'm isolating, it's just going to make things worse. Actually, what I need to do is reach out. And it's a matter of reaching out to the right people. Like, so who are those trusted, close resources that I can go to in a moment of vulnerability? Not just anyone, right? You don't just pick up, the random message from mother-in-law or, so-and-so, not that they can't be your trusted members, but you're intentional. You look to who am I going to reach out to, because who do I know that is going to sit with me with some level of empathy and able to hold me, tenderly in that moment in a way that I'm struggling to do so for myself. That's the isolation practice. I actively recognize it and then go towards intentionally somebody to empathize for me. The other part in terms of the common humanity, this is an ongoing practice, even when I'm not in struggle, is that I continuously identify and look for evidence around me of common humanity. And you see it in the biggest times. You see it with the Ukrainian, crisis. You see it with the pandemic. You see people who are suffering and other people coming to be with them, not just to lift them up, but people coming together who are struggling together. People who are once struggling, lifting the other person struggling up. Looking around and finding not who's got it worse than me. That's not the practice. The practice is recognizing that into every life some rain must fall. And
mm, mm, mm,
seeing it when it happens, I see it daily when I'm in these privileged conversations with my coaching clients. Nothing has convinced me more of
mm,
common humanity, that suffering is a natural, hard but natural part of the human experience and everyday life.
mm,
And my clients come to me every day with their
mm,
everyday moments of struggle,
mm,
and I sit with them in that, and that's how I know I'm not alone.
mm,
And when those moments are
mm,
upon me, it is undeniable to me now that I
mm,
know, at least here, that I'm
mm.
not alone. But I have to bring it to here when I'm in struggle, and remind myself that this too is part of your lived experience.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh, I love that. And I relate 100% to all of you. I was like, yeah, yeah, I do. Me too, me too. And there was a critical question there, or practice that is, what do I need? You said like, it's not what I want, but what do I need? And I think that's probably one of the most powerful daily practices around self-compassion, is asking and then acting on that question. Um, I don't think that I have engaged in that question very often before taking self-compassion. I see that as a present in all my coaching clients who struggle with that. That that question can be baffling, uh, for when you do not let self-compassion in. And then doing something, not what you want, but what you actually need. And we all, what you said, that it's a need for connection, needs to be seen, need to be. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing. And also that active looking, um, of common humanity. And what works for me is that looking for the areas where I struggle. So, um, before embracing self-compassion, I think I had such a sort of limited vision. So let's say that I work on, getting more on camera and doing these lives. Um, and let's say I join a live and somebody is as nervous as me and they go through it. I would blank that. Like, that would be like, oh, that was, I would be supportive, interesting, very interesting, like, intellectually, very interesting that is. Uh, but then I wouldn't collect that as an experience, that is what happens. That happens every day. Like, people do that. People can't, find words to express themselves. Like,
Right.
you know, but I would not catalog those things. So I think that is such a powerful, and I did that. Like, look and notice when you read about how people do things that you want to do, and when they talk about it, don't just gloss over it. Don't just ignore that, and then still hold the expectation of the perfect journey for yourself. Let's
Yeah.
kind of cut through that BS, and really let that in. And I think when we allow that self-compassion, that's what we are like. We are collecting we are really collecting and acknowledging that common humanity. So I love that. I haven't
Yeah.
thought about it, but it is a brilliant practice.
Yeah. And accepting, and that coming to acceptance with that,
Mm,
you know, struggle, like, is a part of life. Life is not just about, feeling happy. It's about feeling everything. And this is, the downs are part of the everything. And that
mm,
is life. Life is not,
mm,
only successful if you get through it without those emotions. So we just
mm.
sort of don't catalog those ones. We just don't put them on the record,
Yeah.
kind of bin them. But yeah,
Mm,
recognizing, like, okay, now I'm really living because I'm
mm,
feeling it all, um,
mm, mm.
even if it's not great. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, Noah. I think what I'm taking away from our conversation and sharing our experiences here today is how important it is to have these, even a simple self-assessment like the one Kristen Neff offers, um, to get at, as you said, the granularity of self-compassion, not just like,
Mm,
am I, am I nice to myself or not? Or am I compassionate or
Mm,
not? Like, what does it mean? And what are the
mm,
components of it? And to understand those components and to put a finger on where do I struggle the most so that I can
mm,
design the right practice for me to shift
mm.
the needle in a positive
Yeah,
direction on this behavior for myself.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, for me, I think for anyone thinking about um, from the place where you are self-critical and self-compassion looks like, some like, New York from London sort of thing. Um, it is really useful to learn from people you connect with, and learning about self-compassion, learning about uh, the connection between self-compassion and connection between self-compassion and courage, between self-compassion and self-worth, learning how it sits, releasing the kind of, or learning and then releasing some of the limiting beliefs around self-compassion that we have grown up with, and our society still sort of perpetuates. So really getting your facts straight, and learning, to me, is the first step towards, something that feels strange. um so that's what I'm kind of reflecting on what, how did I get even on the road for
Yeah.
to entertain the thought of that.
Yeah.
So
Making those
yeah,
connections. And I think, that's what we try to do in our work here, right? So that is,
yeah,
um, for us, these concepts, we take one a month and kind of unpack it, but they're connected. They're
mm,
intricately connected, so we try to do that, a lot of that connection of the concepts in our connection sessions, which
connection, yeah,
makes sense, aptly named in that respect. Um, so as we move forward, this month, with this
mm,
concept of self-compassion, we'll try to unpack some of those. I want to I see that we've got some people who joined us live and others, if you're listening to the recording afterwards, thank you for taking some of your time to be with us this afternoon and to give us your ear for a portion of the time to hear about our experiences with self-compassion. Feel free to go to our grid and share any of your own stories as well, or DM us. We're happy to hear them, mostly because we learn from everybody's experiences. So if you have something to add or another experience, that you're welcome to
mm,
connect with us here on Instagram. So you're also warmly invited. On May 17th is this month's connection session, so you've got some time. We'll put, when we post this live on our grid, the recording of it, I'll post in the caption the link to Kristen Neff's self-assessment on self-compassion. It's free. Go
mm,
do it, see where you're struggling. As I said, the results can come out a little bit confusing because they give you a score for the positive side and a score for the negative element, and they're inverse of one another, and it's a little bit hard to wrap your head around, but we'll be discussing it on May 17th on our connection session. So you can bring them then, and we'll unpack them with you. Thank you so much,
absolutely.
and
Thank you,
wishing you a
thank you.
good and compassionate rest of your day.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, take care. Good to speak with you
Bye.
again, Sanella.
Lovely to talk to you. Bye.
Bye.